Welcome to today's Explainer. Right now, we're going to unpack two words that carry immense biblical weight and, let's be totally honest here, a staggering amount of modern complexity. We're talking about Zion and Zionism. We're going to take a documentary-style look at the foundational texts and historical movements behind these terms, literally stripping away the modern political rhetoric to see what they actually mean at their core.
Okay, let's dive into this by looking at the core tension right off the bat. On one hand, we have Zion, which is this ancient, incredibly sacred term deeply woven into the narrative of Scripture. And on the other hand, we have Zionism, a distinctly modern geopolitical movement. Now, while one is rooted in ancient theology and the other in modern politics, they're actually inseparably connected. They're linked through this enduring historical longing for home, restoration, and covenant. Our goal today is to map exactly how we get from the ancient sacred text to the modern reality.
Section 1. The Weight of Words. Unpacking the Modern Confusion.
You know, in today's world, the word Zionism gets thrown around pretty carelessly. It frequently gets completely flattened into a political slogan or even an insult, stripped entirely of its historical context and severed from its biblical roots. But here's the thing. Zionism didn't just magically materialize out of nowhere as some ideology detached from faith. Rather, the sources show us it is the modern expression of an incredibly ancient hope for return. To really wrap our heads around this movement, we absolutely have to go back to the beginning, starting with Zion itself.
Moving to Section 2. Zion, the sacred place, an archaeological dig into Scripture.
Now, what's really interesting about this is how the definition of Zion expands dramatically over time. In its very first appearance in 2 Samuel, it refers simply to a Jebusite stronghold captured by David known as the City of David. It was just a specific fortified hill. To put that into perspective, back then, it was essentially a local citadel covering only about 12 acres. But as the biblical story unfolds, that meaning scales up massively. It grows to encompass the Temple Mount, then all of Jerusalem, then the entire land of Israel, until finally the term expands to represent the people themselves. It literally evolves from a tiny point on a map to this grand overarching concept.
So why did this specific place matter so much? Well, according to Psalm 132, it comes entirely down to divine election. The text says, "For the Lord hath chosen Zion, he hath desired it for his habitation." In the biblical worldview, Zion isn't sacred just because humans decided it was a nice spot or because of some nationalistic sentimentality. It's significant absolutely because, according to the text, it was divinely chosen. That is the foundational heartbeat of the whole concept.
And this idea of divine election anchors classical Jewish theology. Within this thought tradition, Zion is understood as God's chosen dwelling, the seat of divine justice, and the absolute center of holiness. It's awaited as the future throne of the Messiah and the focal point of redemption, not just for Israel, but for the nations too. In fact, Jewish tradition has historically described Zion as the literal meeting place of heaven and earth. It's like the spiritual axis around which the rest of the world revolves.
Section 3. Zion, the chosen people. Geography filled with everlasting meaning.
Now, Scripture often speaks of Zion not just as a piece of geography, but as a living, breathing community. You'll frequently hear the poetic expression, daughter of Zion, woven throughout the prophets. It refers to Jerusalem, the people of Israel, and specifically the community in a state of longing and exile. And why this matters is actually profound, because Zion is recognized as a people and not just dirt and stone. It can experience human emotions. It can be mourned, it can be comforted, and ultimately it can be redeemed.
And that deep meaning was carried by the people through centuries of dispersion. You've probably heard the famous phrase, "next year in Jerusalem." Well, that isn't some modern political chant. This is a daily longing and a prayer that has been spoken at the close of Passover and the close of Yom Kippur for nearly 2,000 years. Long before modern political movements even existed, Zion lived vibrantly in Jewish memory, expectation, and daily liturgy.
And this brilliantly illustrates the ultimate prophetic vision for the place and the people, perfectly captured in Isaiah 2:3, which tells us that out of Zion shall go forth the law, or Torah. The prophets speak of Zion not merely as Israel's past, but as the center of the entire world's future. The text positions Zion as a source of divine instruction, order, justice, and peace for absolutely everyone. It's a striking universal shift. Zion isn't just a closed-off sanctuary. It's designed to be a lighthouse for all nations.
Section 4. Zionism, the modern movement, translating ancient longing into political reality.
Formally speaking, Zionism is defined as the modern movement affirming the return of the Jewish people to their ancestral homeland and the reestablishment of Jewish national life. Now, it's totally vital to clarify something here. Key historical figures like Theodor Herzl did not invent the desire for return. Actually, scratch that. They didn't invent it at all. That desire was already deeply ingrained. What Herzl and others did was take that centuries-old longing and give it a concrete political form, a form born entirely out of historical necessity.
And this political form was birthed out of sheer, undeniable urgency. After centuries of dispersion, persecutions, expulsions, and pogroms, modern Jewish thinkers were facing stark realities. We're talking about the absolute need for physical safety, a secure homeland, self-determination, and a restored national identity. Survival required way more than just endurance in exile. It literally required a physical return. The movement translated an ancient spiritual longing into modern political action simply out of absolute human necessity.
Section 5. Prophecy and Physical Return. The Sequence of Restoration.
If we look at the biblical texts, they outline a very specific prophetic pattern, particularly in books like Ezekiel, Jeremiah, and Amos. This sequence describes a future where Israel is regathered from the nations, the land is restored and fruitful, Jerusalem becomes a central focal point again, the covenant is preserved, and importantly, spiritual renewal follows the physical return.
So, the crucial point is the sequence itself. Think of Ezekiel's famous vision of the dry bones. It's like a giant puzzle coming together. The physical bones connect first, representing a physical return to the land. Only after that physical assembly does the breath enter them, representing a spiritual awakening. According to the prophetic texts, the physical restoration has to precede the spiritual one. The physical sequence matters immensely to the overarching narrative.
Now, you might be wondering, what does this all mean for today? While modern Zionism is a political, historical, and national movement, for many believers, it's intimately connected to Scripture. Modern Zionism doesn't complete the prophetic promises on its own, but many see it as actively participating in their unfolding. It's viewed not as the flawless completion of redemption, but rather as the necessary, physical beginning of a much larger, promised restoration.
Let's move to and see how this builds in Section 6, the divine and human, synthesizing the promise and the response.
To bring this all together and synthesize the core takeaway of this entire explainer, Zion and Zionism are deeply connected, for sure, but they are not interchangeable. Zion is the eternal divine center. It's the promise. It's the place chosen for divine habitation and the spiritual core of biblical hope. Zionism, on the other hand, is the modern human movement toward it. It's the response to that promise. Zionism serves as the modern expression of an ancient longing to return to the land, to covenant life, and to those ancient promises.
Which leaves us with a really profound question to consider as we wrap up. If Zion truly represents an ancient divine promise, how does understanding Zionism as the human response to that promise change the way we view modern history and geopolitics? It kind of forces us to look past all the modern slogans, doesn't it? To recognize the deep, historical, and textual roots driving current events. Keep asking questions, keep digging into the history, and we will see you next time.